Hi, I'm Mike Kissinger. I'm here at the War Memorial Building in San Francisco, and today we're going to talk about a very interesting subject, primarily because it's something that a lot of people have asked us for because we talk to different business owners on how to make money in their business. And the businesses that we target are veteran-owned businesses or veteran-friendly businesses, and veteran-friendly businesses are businesses who will hire our vets. And when we look at these different types of programs and the people that we want to work with and bring into the fold, so to speak, we like to give them an assurance that if they work with us, they're going to get exactly what we tell them they're going to get. So the question that was on the table today was, how do you create $1 million a year business? Now, there's all kinds of different ways to do that or things that one might want to consider, but you got to sort of go back to the beginning. Why does somebody want to start a business? You know, what we basically have found out that people want to make more money, or they want to build an asset that after they've turned around and they've been in business for a certain period of time, that they can sell that business. So the question becomes, for you, is let's assume that we work with you and we show you how to make $1 million a year business. What can you do with it as an asset? As an asset, you could probably sell that business anywhere from $5 million to $15 million. So as you sit there today and you start asking yourself and you're thinking about this, is this something that you would really like to do? Now, statistically, we know that 85% of all employees in America would love to start their own business. We know that 25% of all the veterans that are coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan want to start their own business. We also know that because of the way the American economy is, that the real trend is to get away from working for corporations and have people start their own business. We also know that the big question that everybody has is, we want to make or build or create $1 million a year business. So how do we do that? Well, like I said, when you start looking at the questions and you start getting back into what's going on, you might want to start looking at some of the statistics. And what are some of the statistics that are out there? Well, how about these two? Number one, less than 3% of small business owners make more than $100,000 a year. What does that mean? Well, there's 29 million businesses in America. If you were to look for companies that make $100,000 or more, only 3% do it. So there's probably about 300,000 businesses in America that make more than 100 grand a year. If you look at the number of businesses that actually make $1 million a year, how many is that? You look at all the things that are out there and it's the illusion that all the businesses are making money. But the reality is this, less than 1/2 of 1% of all the businesses in America make $1 million a year. So that is not many when you consider what's happening. And then you say, you're standing up there and you're telling us that you can end up helping us make $1 million a year business. And I'm saying absolutely. And why can I say that? Well, the reason I can say that is because once you learn how to build a business, once you learn the component parts that go into a business and you learn the systems and what you have to do, then it becomes relatively easy because that 1/2 of 1% of all the businesses that make $1 million or more per year had to do the same thing that I'm going to talk to you about today. Now, if you go a little bit further and you remember that we were going to build an asset, and you look at, let's say we look at all the doctors, the lawyers, we look at the attorneys, the financial planners, the accountants, the home builders, the remodelers, the massage therapists, the business coaches, the consultants, and all the other businesses that are out there. They're in business to build an asset, right? But what's the asset that they really build? When the business closes, because they're trading their time for dollars, and individually they may have licenses, who is going to do the work when the business closes? The guy who was the asset, he's gone. So what's that business really worth if you're trying to build an asset based on what you're doing? There is no asset. You go a little bit further and you're saying, okay, what can you do with the list that the doctor, the lawyer, whoever created? Does that have any value? Well, we say no. And why would you say that? The reason it doesn't have any value is if you had a dentist, doctor, or lawyer, and they decided they're not going to practice any longer, what or who would you go and visit? Would you go to a person who bought the guy's list? Or would you try to find somebody through a referral from a family member or whatever and go to this new person? And chances are you would go to the new person. So you're looking at that and you're saying, okay, business owners have an initial goal to make more money, and they have an initial goal to build assets. But the reality is that they're literally doomed from the very outset. And they're doomed from the outset because they did not know exactly what they're doing. In fact, people have referred to me as living in Egypt at some points in time in my life. And they say that I live on the Nile River. I don't know if you've ever been on the Nile. But people go into business and they have hope and opportunities and different types of feelings that everything is going to work for them. But the reality is when you really get into the numbers, do the numbers work? Especially if you're trading time for dollars. So let's see how it works. We know that if you're working as a professional, you have 2,080 hours a year to work. If you're working as an employee, on average, you're going to work 2,080 hours. So what does that mean? It means that if you're earning $75,000 a year, and if you divide $75,000 a year by 2,080 working hours, you're going to make $36 an hour. That is a long way from $1 million a year, don't you think? If you go to it a little bit further, how far is it away? How about 27,778 hours that you're going to need in order to get to that $1 million number? So the question is, do you have 27,000 hours to put into that? The answer is, hell no. Because to work 1 year, if you're only working 2,000 hours, you need 10 years done in 1 year. So the reality is you cannot get there. Even if you work 24/7, 365, it's not going to happen. So let's look at this and say, okay, suppose you're making $200 an hour. Will that help? If you're working 2,080 hours and you're getting paid $200 an hour, how much are you going to make? How about $416,000? Are you a little light? Like about $600,000 worth? Absolutely. So what can we do in that circumstance? Can we say that you can maybe add products and services to your business in order to offset that? Possibly. But what are you going to add? Suppose you decide that you're going to sell products for $100 a piece. How many products do you have to sell? How about 10,000 in order to equal $1 million? How about 5,000 if you're going to add it, or 6,000 if you're going to add it to the money that you make at $200 an hour? So what are we getting here? What we're getting here is we're starting to understand the business numbers. What we're getting to understand is that to make $1 million in business, to be in that top 1%, is one hell of a task. How about if we go a little bit further and we say, okay, $100, I can get that up to $1,000. So now you're trying to say, okay, I'm going to sell products and services worth $1,000 a piece. How many are you going to have to sell? How about 1,000? If we're looking at 1,000 products and services, and for you to make $1 million, or we're looking at 500, how are you going to get up to that $1 million figure? This is where it gets to be even more important. You know, you look at some of the things that are out there and you're saying, okay, is there a way to do that? What about if we sell products and services to where you sell them for $10,000 a pop? How many times do we need to do that? How about 100? The question is the products and services that you're selling as a business owner, as a professional today, are they being sold for $1 million or $10,000 a pop? Chances are they're not. Because most professionals sell their time by the hour. Most professionals average between $100 and $300 an hour. So when you're looking at why this becomes almost an impossibility, you have to think of other ways and other ideas on how you're going to do this. So let's look at a little case study that we threw together with a past client. And the past client was making $250,000 a year. The guy says, okay, if we're doing this, what's the average that a guy makes doing what I'm doing? We told him $100,000 a year. And his question was, well, how can I get to $1 million? Or how can I double my business? So we said, okay, you're making $250,000 a year. Suppose we just double your business. He says, great. What do I have to do in order to end up making that money? He says, it's really simple for you. You're working 40 hours a week right now. You're working 2,080 hours a year. All we're going to do is all you have to do is work 4,160 hours a year and you've got it. What do you think his response was? Not a chance. So even though he had the desire to make $500,000, he did not have the want or the need or the real desire to double his income. So we say, okay, if that is what he had to do and he didn't want to do it, how can you take your business or your profession and build $1 million a year income? Well, the way that we looked at it, we said, okay, suppose we turn you into a master marketer. Suppose we put more people working with you, sort of like creating a team, and you go out and you market. And as a result of you becoming an expert marketer, you find out that you add 6 people to your office in order to generate this money. Do you think that that would work for you? If you were able to come up with a percentage of the money, or the percentage of the time, or a percentage of what they were doing so you could build on your income? The answer was absolutely. Because what was really taking place? By you becoming a person who is working with other professionals, and you have 6 people working there, and you look at the average, you working as your work on average, if you're making $250,000 a year, and you ask for a return of 30%, you're multiplying that 6 times over. You can do that, no problem at all. But it's a thing of opening up your mind to the idea that when you're in business today and you're looking at your opportunities of what you can do to create $1 million business, you cannot do this alone. And that's the biggest problem that most business owners have out there, or most professionals have out there, is they think that the pie's in the sky. They think that the hand of fate is going to drop down and give them exactly what they want without understanding the numbers. And this is where I'm telling you that you're wrong. So if you wanted to end up building that practice, or you wanted to go through that process and cycle to do that, you need to start thinking of it in that regard. Now there's another way that you can do this, and I always talk about this as being the front end of your business and the back end of your business. And the way that I look at it is to say, okay, you're the professional, you're making whatever sum it is that you're making, how can we optimize what it is that you're doing? If you take I always use a smaller business type example, let's say that you're doing $100,000 a year. And we say you got a certain number of clients, which is basically the number of clients that you have, the amount of sale that you have, and the frequency of sale that you have. And if it's $100,000 a year, you probably have about 100 clients, and they're shopping with you or buying your service once a year. Well, what happens if we double that across the board? If we double that across the board, what happens is you've taken your $100,000 a year business and you've turned it into an $800,000 a year business. Some guys might want to say, well, how do you do that? Well, if you have 100 clients and you turn them into 200 clients, if you have a purchase value of $100 and you turn it into $200, and if you have a frequency of sale time of 1 that's being converted to 2, and you multiply those numbers times themselves, by learning how to market and sell your own business, you have now created a 700% improvement just by doubling what it is that you do. Now, why would we do that with you? Well, the reason that we would do that with you is because you're promising to us, if we sit down and show you how to create this multi-million-dollar business, that you're going to hire our vets. You're going to hire vets for what reason? Well, if I give you $800,000, do you think you can hire 1 or 2 vets? Absolutely, because what are you losing? If you look at the average income for a vet that's working in America right now, the average income for most people is $26,000 a year across America. Well, let's assume that we look at the average income for vets as being $35,000 a year. If we give you $800,000, you should be more than willing to hire 2 vets for $75,000. But it doesn't stop there, because we're talking about the front end, we're talking about the way that your business can be created, we're talking about looking at good marketing systems that work for you, we're talking about what you can do if you just start opening your mind and start looking at creating joint ventures, looking at different types of products and services that are available to you, looking at different types of endorsements that are available for you, and saying, okay, if you will sit down and show us how to do this, can you make that type of money? The answer is absolutely. So we're looking at that and we're saying, okay, what's the back end? And there is not a business out there that I know of that does not have complementary back-end products and services. And what I mean by that is, let's say that this professional is a martial artist, or he's a chiropractor, or he's a doctor, or he's a whatever. And you already built up the front end of his business because you added additional people that he's relying on the law of organized effort to produce 6 times what he's making on the front end. What happens on the back end? Well, what happens on the back end is, let's say that you were smart enough to create a joint venture within the wellness industry or in the internet industry with companies who are top-notch to do that, and you look at the products that are available to you that are complementary. Do you think that a certain number of people would buy from you again? Chances are, yes, they would. What's the percentage? Well, the percentage is this. It's 30 to 60%. So if you have 1,000 clients and 30 to 60% will buy from you again, that means 300 to 600 clients will continue to buy from you. If 300 to 600 clients are willing to buy from you, what is it they're going to buy from you? Well, obviously, it depends on the joint venture that you created and the back end that you put into your business, because what we're really looking at is your business to optimize what you have. Because what's the target? The target is $1 million. Then if you take that a little bit further, and you know that 30 to 60% of these businesses, or the people that you work with, or people that you already service, are going to buy from you, how can you make that work better? And how you can make that work better as far as joint venturing is joint venturing with Fortune 500 companies. Joint venturing with companies that not only complement you, but also train you. So that way, what happens to you? And I think hopefully you start seeing that your position as a business owner is growing, and the things that have suppressed the economy or have suppressed the amount of money that you're making is starting to change. And why would I say that? Because I know that we did some research on how businesses are doing in the country, and we come to find out that 39% of the businesses are actually making money. Good for them. But we also found out that 30% of the businesses are just breaking even, and we also found out that 30% of the businesses are losing money. We also found out that if you look at the average of businesses stays in business, it's about 10 years. So the business owner that's looking at this and is saying, well, should I create this type of relationship, does not understand that that's 10 years that they may not ever have gotten paid for. That's 10 years that if they were willing to add a few additional things to their business, that they can optimize 10 years of what they think is lost time and turn that into profits that they never imagined were available for them. That's 10 years of saying, why didn't I think about this earlier? So you look at the business and you're saying, okay, front end's looking pretty good. Back end, we have some options to consider. And we're saying, okay, if we have these options to consider, what might we do? And that becomes an interesting question for you, because all businesses are somewhat different. Construction businesses are obviously different from lawyer practices. Doctors' businesses are different from chiropractors' practices, or whatever. So when you're looking at that back end that you're trying to think about and how it can work, you can say, okay, we can do this. So what I try to do is to say, okay, if you can build this business and you can add the money on the front end. And if you can build a business to add it on the back end, do you think that it gets closer to, say, building $1 million business within the 1% of all the top businesses in the country that actually earn $1 million starts becoming feasible for you? Does it open your mind up to say, I can do this? And I would surely hope so, but it depends on how you do it. So what we do is we make recommendations that you may want to consider using the wellness industry. You may want to consider using the internet, retail type industry. You may want to end up, if you have say you have a health type company or a Taekwondo company or whatever, and you know that because of whatever it is that you do, these people actually use whatever that joint venture relationship is to make their lives better. Do you think that you could, in fact, sell more products and services to them? Absolutely. So when you look at that, someone might say, well, can we do it? Can we not do it? The issue is, yes, you can do it if that's your target. But let me ask you a question here. Do you have any of these in your business? Do you have past customers, yes or no? Do you have specialized knowledge of an industry, or are you an industry expert? Yes or no? Do you have unique products and services or things that you do? Yes or no? Do you have underperforming salespeople? Chances are you may not have any salespeople in your business at all. Do you have advertising that doesn't get results? Present customers? Relationships with other businesses? Average unit of sale amounts for the things that you do? Back-end products and services? A community reputation? Prospective customers? A great location? Staff expertise or lack of it? Quality products? Low closing ratios? Competitive advantages, marketing efforts that don't work, packaging of products and services that are questionable, maybe a web presence. When you start looking at these things and you start plugging them into the target number of $1 million a year, your answers to those questions may or may not make it for you. How about these? Are you making any of these marketing mistakes? Not promoting your unique selling proposition, running ineffective image or medium advertising, cutting prices on the front end with no back-end margin in order to build your business. And that's a very important one, because if you start, what's the hardest thing to do in a business? The most expensive thing to do in a business is to find a new client. But by putting the back end into your business that offers additional products and services, they're a zero cost. So it's entirely up to you based on the relationship that you have with your clients. How about not testing all components of your marketing system? Assuming that you have one, and we've done research on that and found out that almost 78% of the companies that are out there do not have a marketing system. 72% don't even have a business plan. And we're wondering about how to build $1 million a year business. How about building only 1 or 2 marketing pillars? If you don't have a marketing system, then obviously you got a real problem. If you do what most people do, they pick out one thing. Maybe it's a referral, maybe it's a telephone call, maybe it's an ad, maybe it's a direct mail piece, but only one. But once you start looking at the systems that's available to you, you start putting them in place, then you realize that building this $1 million business that we're talking about becomes relatively easy. What about not using joint ventures or alliances? Maybe you don't have ads that tease and tantalize people, but instead educate and teach them. What about having or not having a website? The most critical thing that you can have for a business is a website. And in the absence of a website, what you find out is nobody is going to know who you are. But there's an even more important reason for having a website, and the importance of having that website, as strange as life is because once you put the information on it, you never really have to say it again. It becomes a marketing tool for you. It becomes like your ongoing salesman, that people have to know who you are. So if you're considering or wanting to consider building $1 million a year business, those are some of the considerations that you might want to take in place. If you're looking at a marketing system that potentially can work for you, this is what you might want to consider. Developing a unique selling proposition and applying it to all the things that you do. So what is a unique selling proposition? The unique selling proposition is what tells everyone that comes into your environment, into your world, or into your business exactly what you do and why you do it better than anybody else. Next thing you might want to consider is leveraging current marketing processes, assuming that you have one. If you look at having that particular marketing process, what is it? Next thing you want to do is looking at past, present, or prospective customers, because we've already talked about the 3 ways to grow your business system. And as a result of doing that, you find out over time that you could take a $100,000 a year business and turn it into an $800,000 a year business. If you take a $1 million a year business and you make it 30% change across the board, you can almost add $700,000 more to your business. So this becomes very profitable for you. The next thing to do is to consider alliance opportunities or joint ventures so you can grow your business as a result of creating those types of things. Next thing you might want to do is consider media. What about community marketing? What about direct marketing or internet marketing? You see, when you're trying to create that $1 million business that you want, rather than looking at pie in the sky, you start becoming a lot more analytical. You start looking at the industries that are there to support you. You start looking at the people or the experts that know exactly what it is that you need to know. Those things are available for you. And they're there, and we're there for you if you're willing to make one commitment. And that one commitment is to hire the veterans that we have that are available for you, the ones that are coming back. If that's something that you want to do, and that's something that you can plug into, give me a call. Let me know that that's what you want to do. And if it is what you want to do, we can't guarantee to every business that you're going to make $1 million. But we can guarantee that if we look at what it is that you have, and that if you put your business the way that it should be, this can happen for you. So with that in mind, I'd like to say thank you very much for your time today, and wish you well. If you want to get a hold of me, my name is Mike Kissinger. My number is 415-678-9965. And we thank the service members, and we thank the friendly veteran business owners who are willing to do all they can do for our veterans. Thank you very much.